Hello, wonderful witches. I'm Colette, and I'm here today from Witchways to talk to you about a discreet piece of plant magic that you can use in public situations that is very non-obvious for protection, maybe banishing if needed. It just looks like a vase of flowers or a jar of plants, and so it's perfect for public or semi-private situations. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you ever have a need for spells that need to be not obvious to those around you. So the basic take here is that I use a combination of plants, color magic, and numerology combined with intention in a vase to create this magical spell working. So let's jump in. I'm going to work with the power of 4 in this spell for stability in this working. I like to use even numbers when I want something to be stable or have strong boundaries, especially the number 4. So I'll be using 4 plants: red and white roses, rosemary, and garden sage. Roses are protective if they haven't been dethorned, so make sure that that's the case. They also look really innocuous if you're trying to be discreet. Start by centering yourself and lighting a candle and asking the magic of protection to flow into your spell. Place each of the colored roses in the vase. Then I would add fresh stalks of rosemary for general protection and clearing. And then I would add the fresh stalks of garden sage for wisdom in steering clear of difficult or tricky situations or trouble. If you don't have fresh rosemary or sage in your garden and they don't have it at a local market, you can just buy some dried and make a weak tea. Then take that tea and rinse your vase out 4 times, maybe saying something like, protect and clear, keep me safe. You could repeat this as many times as you like until you feel like it's done. Using an herbal tea will also work instead of putting fresh stalks in that vase. If you feel like you live in an area where people would think it was odd if you put fresh stalks of herbs in your vase. I'm also using color magic in this spell, so I'm going to add black to the power of the red and white roses. In one of the magical traditions I've worked in, people considered red, black, and white to be the primal colors of magic, and usually it corresponded to something like youth, maturity, and elderhood. So there's a couple ways that you can fit black into your spell. You can of course use a vase if you have one. They're kind of rare though. You could also just add some black stones or some black marbles or some of those half round glass beads that are black that people use in floral arrangements. All those things are readily available online. You could also gather some black stones from your garden, put them in some water to soak for a little while, and as they're soaking, ask the power of the protection of the deep earth to flow into the water, and then use that water in your vase of plants as you're putting your spell together. If you would like this to be more of a semi-permanent decorative feature that you keep around in your office, just so that you aren't having the same flower combination every week, you could use dried flowers instead. And so the way that I would do this is to just hang your roses upside down in a dark, warm place for a few weeks. The timing, of course, is going to be dependent on the humidity and the temperature. And you can also do the same with the garden sage and the rosemary. They're not quite as decorative when you do that, and they might look a little odd, so you could instead do the tea version that I talked about, where you make a tea and use the rosemary and sage as a wash for the inside of your vase. You could also substitute white statice and red straw flowers in your spell if you want. They're almost dry when you get them, so it's really easy to dry them by just hanging them upside down. White status is considered a little bit protective. Straw flowers are also considered a little bit protective. That's not my first thought when I use them, but they do have some protective qualities. But in this case, when I'm using these dried flowers, I'm mostly calling on the power of the colors to fuel the spell. I also feel like dried herbs and dried plants in this kind of spell create a sense of long-lasting effect to the spell. Whichever version that you use, let your candle burn all the way out. Let's talk about bumping this spell up a bit to be a small banishing spell. And I want to say right from the start that banishing is very tricky. It's easy for it to go wrong in this kind of public setting. It can backfire on you really easily. So I would do the minimal banishing intention that you possibly could. And if you could keep it at simple protection, I would do that instead, unless you're really experienced. So for example, maybe you have a coworker who's really a problem and you just need them to just kind of stay out of your space. So I would start with your intention to keep them out of your workspace or something really specific. I would not banish them out of my life because that's something that could really easily backfire. You could get fired from your job. Magic often takes the easiest route possible to get to its end, so you'd have to be really careful about that. The way that I would bump it up is to just increase the potency and switch out some of the herbs I would use. I would add blue vervain to the spell, which is strongly clearing and protective and is used whenever you want to clear something completely out of the space. And maybe agrimony, especially if someone's flinging a lot of energy your way in the workspace. You could try substituting Santolina for one of those two herbs, and I would substitute Santolina when someone is kind of creepy or draining your energy, because Santolina has the physical property of repelling parasites. It's kind of its superpower. Let's face it, you're not going to find agrimony, blue vervain, or Santolina in a local supermarket, farmer's market, or even at a florist store. And unless you're like me and you're a plant geek, you probably aren't growing them either. Plus, they don't look as decorative in the vase, and agrimony in particular just wilts almost right away, so it's not non-obvious. So what you want to do is, before you put your red and white flowers in the vase, you're again going to make a wash, a very strong tea from the dried herbs, whatever you're using, and just wash out your vase 4 times. Filling it up with the tea, dumping it out, filling it up with the tea, dumping it out, doing that 4 times, and asking the power of those herbs to help you in banishing, and then say your very carefully crafted minimal sentence. An example of a really minimal banishment might be to say something like, I banish so-and-so from my workspace when they are in a bad mood and looking to take it out on someone. That way you can use the power of banishment just to draw an extra strong filter around your workspace. And what I would say is that if, however, someone presents a very real danger to you, it's not that they just irritate you or something like that, but that they are actually dangerous or harassing you in some way, whether that's sexually, verbally, or being threatening to you, or spreading lies about you at the office, of course, go ahead and do a full-on banishing of them out of your entire workplace if you feel that management is not going to be responsive to you bringing this problem to their attention. And often they aren't, especially if you're someone who's marginalized, person of color, a queer person, a trans person, unless you have a really, really awesome workplace. These plant jar magic spells are ones that I use all the time, and not just in this particular situation. I often use them as an adjunct to my other spells, just to bring a little more focus. I'm curious if any of you have had to be discreet about your witchcraft. I'm pretty lucky. I don't have to be too discreet. As always, thank you all for liking, subscribing, sharing, and check out my Patreon page if you feel called to support me in that way. Until next time, stay safe and be well.